Hey, what's going on, guys? President Duterte of the Philippines is in China right now, and he's basically said goodbye to the U.S. and is going to embrace China, possibly embrace Russia. And this is a horrible move, okay? The U.S. is not the reason that the Philippines have a lot of the problems that they do, okay? Yes, the United States did, after the Spanish-American War, they occupied the Philippines and wouldn't grant the Philippines their independence when they wanted. But even before the Spanish conquered the Philippines, there was a huge range of conquest. Okay, first of all, the original inhabitants of the Philippines are not the Filipinos, they're the Negritos. That's their name, the Negritos. And that was the name of the group, the ethnic group. And then they were taken over by the Igorots, okay? Or Igorots, Igorots, okay? And first, the Igorots expelled the Negritos to the mountains. And then the Filipinos, they expelled the Igorots to the mountains. And the Igorots in the mountains, they developed a huge, sophisticated irrigation system, which allowed them to survive in the mountains. A crop growing and an irrigation system that was state-of-the-art, that was very efficient, allowed them to survive in the mountains. So, then Spain conquered the Philippines. Then the U.S. defeated Spain in the Spanish-American War, and the United States occupied the Philippines, but the United States also granted the Philippines their independence, and they were moving the Philippines towards a gradual path of independence. And while they were doing that, okay, the United States gave a bunch of free malaria pills to people in the Philippines. There were a lot of free malaria pills, and that's the reason now that the Philippines does not have the malaria problem that they do in the urban areas, is because the United States gave away and basically gave free malaria pills to the Filipino people. Okay? The United States did that. And that is not aggressive occupation by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. There were several ethnic groups in the Philippines and several different official languages. And the U.S. troops there built roads and developed roads in the Philippines that allowed the ethnic groups to meet and converse and understand each other. But at the same time, it prevented a lot of civil war and a lot of ethnic conflict in the Philippines. And where I know this is that there's a good scholarly book written titled America in the Philippines by Carl Crow. And you can get it at a lot of university libraries. And it talks about the efficiency of what the U.S. has done for the Philippines. And the reason that the Philippines had a leprosy problem that they did is because a lot of Spanish missionaries based in the Philippines went to Japan to try to spread the gospel in Japan. Well, there were a lot of undesirables in Japan, or what they deemed as undesirable, and that there were lepers, people with leprosy. And but they told the missionaries, you can bring the leprosy patients back to the Philippines with you, and those patients went to Luzon, and that's why for the longest time the island of Luzon in the Philippines had a leprosy problem. Japan didn't want the people with leprosy and cast the problem out on the Philippines. That's something that the United States did. And that is why also there were massacres between Muslims and Christians in Mindanao and the southern Philippines way before the U.S. arrived. Okay, the U.S. presence there actually kept a lot of peace. There were some massacres, yes, that did occur, but they kept a lot of peace and conflict between the Muslim rebels and the Christians. And also, there's a lot of evidence that it kept the Muslim rebels from taking over all of the Philippines and subjugating the Philippines to radical Islam, forcing them to convert to radical Islam. Carl Crow notes that in his book. So the U.S. has not been the bad guys to the Philippines. They've done some things that were not good. I will consent to that. And that they should have granted the Philippines independence when the Philippines wanted them to. That's not something that they did. However, there were massacres that occurred from Filipino guerrillas. Any Philippine village that wanted the U.S. there, that didn't want to be independent, they massacred that village. They sometimes would cut off tongues, they would cut off ears of these people who did not desire to become independent. That's why an elite guerrilla unit known as the Philippine Scouts were formed, and they were Filipinos that fought on the side of the U.S. during the U.S.-Philippine War. and the author of the book, The History of the Filipino People, said that the Filipino guerrillas matched the U.S. stride for stride, step for step in massacres. One of the things they would do is like they would capture a U.S. soldier, cut his stomach, and show the other U.S. soldiers, and then show the other Philippine soldiers his intestines. That went on. Also, Emilio Aguinaldo, who led the Philippine insurrection. I admired Emilio Aguinaldo. He wanted the Philippines to be independent from Spain and then also from the U.S. That's why he backed the U.S. in the Spanish-American War, and then fought against the U.S. when the Philippines were trying to get their independence from the United States. Antonio Luna made a suggestion to Emilio Aguinaldo. Luna was one of Aguinaldo's generals. And basically, Emilio Aguinaldo had him shot just for a disagreement. So Emilio Aguinaldo had a quest for glory, and he about equaled himself with Philippine independence versus his own personal glory. He cared about each equally. He would not designate a lot of command to a lot of generals because he wanted to be the main person in that independence movement, because he wanted to be the hero and he wanted a lot of fame and glory for himself. And while there's a lot of evidence that the U.S. probably fired the first shot, the Philippines and the U.S. both claim each fired the first shot, but there were a lot of Philippine guerrillas that came into Manila right when the U.S. soldiers arrived. They came in and dared and taunted the U.S. soldiers to come fire the first shot. And that was in a book. That was in a book that, not by Carl Crow, but that was in another book that was actually pretty critical of what the U.S. did to the Philippines. But even that book recognized that the Philippine guerrillas would come in there, they would taunt them and dare them to fire the first shot. And that stuff went on. So the U.S. has not been the worst ally to the Philippines. The U.S. has also not failed the Philippines. And Duterte is not telling the whole story. He don't even care about the Philippines nor its people. He just wants to be a dictator. So, anyways, hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless, and bye-bye. Bye-bye.